That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, you want to start with this story? I guess this is the one leading our news right now, the decision by the CAQ. Literally just a couple of hours ago, well, a few hours ago, Jean-François Robert, the secularism minister, posting that in the wake of that study we talked about the other day with recommendations, the government's moving ahead and introducing a bill to ban public prayers. What do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, the only reason I added this to the list, I heard you talking to Carolyn Van Vardingen over at CTV, and you mentioned it's like, the head of the PQ is a bit mixed because it looks like they stole his idea. Like they're having a competition, Aaron, over who can go after people praying in the streets. And we both know, and our listeners know, we're not talking about people praying in the streets. We're talking about Muslims. We're talking about Muslims and demonstrations because honestly, I'm pretty sure when this legislation comes down, this ridiculous xenophobic, Islamophobic legislation comes down, there will not be a proviso for sending in the Sortie du Québec tactical squad on Good Friday when people are out doing the Stations of the Cross, praying as they do so. I don't see that happening, Aaron. I really, really don't. And as crazy as it seems, and I would never have mentioned this to you, I would never have raised this to you any other time than now because it's clear now the CAQ is like some really spittle spattered, wounded animal, which is going to try and do anything to try and get itself back up in the polls. And in the past, it has been able to do so by appealing to people's hatred. But I'm honestly, Aaron, this just occurred to me like 10 seconds before I came on. The minister responsible for adopting this racist law, or trying to get this racist law adopted, is the minister who also said, with a straight face, I'm hearing too much English spoken in downtown Montreal.
Yeah.
So when you look at the patent absurdity, the cynical, populism of this proposed anti-prayer law, is it that far off the beaten track to have someone in this, this trained still caucus of the CAQ saying, me too, I'm hearing too much English. Maybe we should be limiting the amount of English that people are saying outdoors on city streets. And while we're at that, Aaron, I just want to set the record straight on something. The recommendations that were made, I was listening to the press conference of the two commissioners who were looking into, how to revamp or give Bill 21 new teeth. And the whole issue of prayer in the street, they said cities already have the power to do this. It's called, you're not allowed to block the streets, which is what the issue was. You cannot block the streets. These are bylaws. If the city of Montreal and police don't want to enforce it, that's another kettle of fish. But for the provincial government and this CAQ, this beleaguered, downtrodden CAQ, unpopular CAQ government, to turn around and say, yeah, you know what, we're going to do that. I honestly think, Aaron, we have entered Wonderland. We are now through the looking glass and expect even more off-the-wall suggestions as, Francois Legault's sphere of influence doesn't seem to extend past the role of microphones circling around his face on a daily basis.
With respect to that study, and we had someone on, one of the co-authors, earlier in the week, the recommendations were like, we're going to give this to the government, let them think about it and see what they come up with. And literally, they waited 2 days. I mean, there was no what they call sober second or even first thought here. It was like, we need something. And you mentioned this the other day, Jim. Let's be honest, this is not a bad diversion from what's going on right now at the Colon Commission either.
This is exactly what they do. This is exactly what they've been doing for the past 8 years. And the big question is, how much longer are Quebecers who absolutely know better going to buy into this BS, this cynical BS that, we figure you're so stupid that we're going to turn around and tell you we have to protect you from prayer in the street, when in fact what they're doing, as per usual, is really appealing to their core base, the elderly, uninformed, frightened, white francophones living out in the sticks who have never been to Montreal in their lives, much less even heard someone praying in a language other than French. So you know what? I guess that's the real question here. How long will Quebecers put up with this garbage? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've misread this entire place, and people are 100% in favor of it. But honestly, when I look at the numbers that the CAQ is getting, even with Bill 21, even with Bill 96, and even as perhaps French media suddenly realize these guys are starting to sound downright weird, a la Trump weird, maybe we'll see things change.
I will point out one thing. I asked this question when we started today, and I'm going to come back to it once we're done here. And the idea, or at least the topic came up, that particular situation, I don't know if you'd seen, I'm sure you did, where there was a Muslim prayer group, a bunch of men on a downtown Montreal street in the middle of the day, blocking traffic, and police simply standing around, doing nothing, just basically, watching. And then everyone left and we all went back home. And I think a lot of people looked at that and thought to myself, wait a sec. How is that allowed to happen on the streets of Montreal when, in fact, we already have existing laws that prevent you from doing something like that? I think that's what has some people going.
The answer is very simple. Aaron. Montreal police let them get away with it. If anybody else, for any reason, sat down in the middle of the street, I assure you, and we have seen Montreal police act very quickly, even with people who've managed to glue themselves to the pavement, Aaron. They've moved very, very quickly. So the question right now would be to Thady Daguerre, the head of the Montreal Police Department, and indeed to Valérie Plante. I understand that, you want to be, how can I put it? You don't want to be repressive. You want to be proactive. But clearly there are some people, and I won't even say Muslims because I think these people are absolutely unrepresentative of Islam. They may say different, but the fact is they're pushing the envelope and they're getting away with it. And the minute they don't get away with it, believe me, there is nothing in the Charter of Rights that says you have a fundamental right to block the street. You do not. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You determine that.
And to what you just said, and I said this as well, the idea being the police tolerated this, continue to tolerate it, and expect different behavior is completely ridiculous. You let it get away once, they will do it again and again and again.
Exactly. And to be fair to police, they are being told.
Exactly what to do or what not to do in this particular case.
They're being told to do nothing.
Yeah. Let me get to a couple of things real quick before we got to wrap up. The other one is we found out today, as we wait for the Premier to testify at the Gallant Commission next week, turns out UPAC was on this case, but wait a sec, not just UPAC on the case. Someone tried to dissuade them from digging up too much evidence.
Well, they're citing lawyer-client privilege with certain documents they want to get their hands on. And lest we forget, folks, because, we like to talk in shorthand here in Quebec, especially with acronyms, UPAC. What is UPAC? It's Quebec's anti-corruption unit. Okay, and they're investigating the SAAQ, the Quebec Vehicle Licensing Board, for going $500 million over a budget for the digitalization of said agency. The fact they're involved, the fact that they reportedly have 4 suspects, suggests to me this goes way beyond whatever the Gallant inquiry is going to uncover, although indeed, with each passing day, we are discovering a more insouciant, incompetent, and quite frankly, out-to-lunch gang of amateurs who've been running Quebec for the past 8 years. The big question is, how will this translate in the polls? How will this translate in the CAQ's ability to govern for the next, 13 months? I don't think they can. I discussed this with you yesterday. But the fact is, that's where we are. How can Quebec continue when essentially every day there is some new scandalous headline, and now we have passed that frontier into a criminal investigation? That's a bit dangerous.
By the way, maybe worth noting, at the same time as you talk about this government, they also voted themselves a pay raise. People, just in case you haven't been paying attention.
They explain this. I know they explain this. Remember when I had the 30% pay raise, and this $10,000 they're getting now is part and parcel of that. And it says, well, traditionally they've been underpaid and blah, 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 blah. Although they do get raises a la carte. If you're on a committee or you chair a committee, you get extra money. But the timing of it is so, and this is the fundamental problem. I don't give a damn. They're going to get their money. How many thousands of Quebecers have joined that ever-growing group, Aaron, that says this is all garbage? I don't believe any of them. There's nothing there. And that leaves the field open for people who should be questioning their government. That leaves the field open to just the fanboys, the partisans, the trolls, whatever. And all of a sudden, our process becomes, very, very American, where if you dare to criticize one party or an opposition party, you're obviously in the pay of the government, and vice versa. If you say, the government seems to have done a good job on that, the question will be, wow, how much are they paying you to say that? This is where we are, and it's stuff like this, I think, that really drives people, either into that camp or away entirely and just wiping their hands of the whole process. And with a democracy, that's downright dangerous.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
That's a man.